Saw the money and got activated. Saw the money and got activated. Saw that money and got activated. I saw that money and got activated. Canada Goose. Keep me wearing my cold city. I got a pole with me. Glock on 450.
Okay, so we are finally starting on the Hardbody. For those that don't know or are just subscribing, we have to do a frame swap on this truck because the frame is trashed on this thing. And we're also going to be cutting the back half of the frame and putting a S13 240SX rear subframe in it, so it'll have rear independent suspension, and that'll allow us to run coilovers. And then we're going to do a coilover conversion on the front, along with also turboing the KA. We're not going to do built bottom end or anything, and probably just stock fuel for the time being, and just throw a turbo on it. We already have pretty much everything to go turbo. We just need AFR gauge and a couple little miscellaneous parts. Then we're also going to be getting four-wheel drive front fenders because they're a little bit more flared, and then we'll most likely be trying to make some type of over fender for the rear. Really don't like flares. I think they look stupid. We may end up having to go that route, but I'm gonna try to use Pathfinder rear quarters if I can find some clean ones, cut those out, and probably riv nut those onto the side of this. Give this a little bit of space because this is hardly an offset wheel, and I had all kinds of rubbing issues with it. It was just a nightmare. So with that being said, guys, we're gonna start on this. I wouldn't expect any like consistent uploads back to back right this second, but I am gonna start tearing it down, and I kind of want to film that. So we're kind of just pecking away on it. We don't even have the new frame up here yet. The new frame's at my house. We got to do some welding on it and grinding on it, and just haven't brought it up here yet. So we're gonna start tearing the front clip apart because we do have to pull the cab off, obviously. Got to pull the engine and transmission, obviously. So yeah, gonna start on that now. We started tearing the Hardbody part quite a while ago, but the clips are going to be in this video, so it was a couple seconds for you guys. So we are going to officially start pulling the engine out. What I'm basically going to start doing is disconnecting the harness. I'm going to take painter's tape and a label, put a number on each plug, and then I'm going to take that number sheet and put it in the notes of my phone. So I'll mark this sensor here as number 1, and then I'll put in the notes of my phone, number 1 is this sensor. So that way I don't have to play guess and check, even though it should be pretty self-explanatory. I just don't want to have to, I don't know if we'll do all that because we'll see how things look, because a lot of this stuff is pretty self-explanatory. But yeah, we're going to start pulling this engine out, basically, is what I'm getting at. So we just got to pretty much unplug everything, get everything separated from the engine, try and pull the harness off the engine, and then we got to get the transmission disconnected and stuff, which entails us getting this thing up on jack stands, which isn't exactly easy because it's so low. But yeah, without further ado, we're gonna get right to it. I didn't put it on time lapse because there's a lot of time lapse in this video already, but we got pretty much everything that I can tell disconnected from the engine. This harness over here we just disconnected and threw it on there. The injectors and all the top side of the engine is just kind of flipped up onto the windshield. Pretty much all the lines, all these clamps that you see, like, let's see if I can find one, for example. I don't see one. But if you know Nissans, like old Nissans, they use these like ring style clamps. They're really shitty. Like, they're just not good clamps. Oh, here we go. If you can see that one right there. I've just been cutting them instead of trying to loosen them because I want to replace them anyways. What happens is they get seized and then you try to take these off and they just end up snapping anyways. So I just cut those. These fuel lines here I ended up just cutting because I want to replace those fuel lines. For the most part, I want to refresh everything on this truck. Just because I've learned that with that thing over there, that doing it the first time and doing it once and getting it done with is the best way to go about it, versus, you know, realistically I could probably leave those fuel lines alone, but a year from now I could be driving this thing 200 miles to who knows what, and that one single line that I didn't touch decides to burst, and then I'll be like, yeah, I wish I would have done that. So that's kind of why I wanted to make sure I did that. But now we are going to drain the oil on the engine. Actually, we don't need to do that. We need to drain the oil on the transmission. I don't know. I guess we're gonna drain the trans fluid and see what we get done. Okay, so when we left off, I said that I was gonna try and drain the trans fluid, or see if I could. That was like a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. But I did try and pull the drain plug out, and it is pretty well in there. I'm confident that we can get it out, but I really just don't want to mess with it at this point in time. I'm thinking about doing what I did with the last truck I pulled the engine out of, or last hardbody I pulled the engine out of, is I just left the drive shaft in and didn't drain the fluid, and I just pulled the engine out, and when I pulled the engine out, it pulled the drive shaft out, and obviously fluid will leak out, but this time I'll be a little more prepared and I'll have something to catch the fluid. So with that being said, my understanding right now is that the only thing we have left is the trans bolts and the engine mount bolts, and then maybe like a couple plugs on the transmission if they don't come off with it. And I think this thing can potentially start to come out. We'll probably pull this off the fan to eliminate that as something that either A, gets broken, or B, gets in the way of what we're trying to do. And I'm gonna be honest with you, if it ends up being too much of a pain, we're just gonna right there pull it and just pull it straight through the front of the truck, because I don't really care to spend much time with it. It'd be different if this core support was like super minty, but it's not. So enough with blobbering on. I'm gonna crawl under here, see what I can figure out, and start loosening stuff and hopefully yank this engine out. So as you guys saw, we got the engine out of the hardbody. Actually came out way easier than I expected it to. When I pulled the engine out of the last hardbody, I don't remember it going this easy, but I think the problem was I didn't have the truck up in the air, so the transmission was hitting the ground when I tried to pull it up, because you have to pull these up at like a super harsh angle to clear the core support. But got it out with pretty much no problems at all. Got it on the engine stand. I was really eager to see how the clutch looked because it was slipping and stuff towards the end of the last time I drove it. And like the clutch is, I mean, obviously it needs replaced, but it's actually like not as beat up as I expected it to be, along with the pressure plate. I mean, obviously it has some hot spots in it, but really not that bad. I was super duper excited to get the turbo manifold on it and see how it looked with the turbo hanging off the side. And it turns out this manifold is not for this engine, and it won't even work anywhere close. I mean, there was no way for me to check it without pulling the manifold off. But this is for a DE, a KA24 DE, which is dual overhead cam, which you would imagine would be, you know, different, and it is. So I bought this thing like a long time ago, so there's no taking it back. So if you need a turbo manifold for a KA24 DE, this is for sale. I'll sell it for 80 bucks. It also comes with the gaskets and the studs that go to it. I'll show it here. Studs and the gasket kit's right there. So yeah, so that's unfortunate, but yeah, so we're going to clean up in here because we're done for the night. I'll have to go buy some oil dry because the trans crapped itself all over the floor, which I knew would happen, but yeah, it's super exciting to see an engine out of this thing. We're gonna paint the engine bay, I think. Well, I know we're gonna paint the engine bay. And yeah, I'm just super excited. Now we just have to figure out how we're gonna get the cab off. We'll have to put it back on the ground, roll it out, pull the bed off of it, and I'm probably gonna take the bed and sit it on the trailer outside because there's no reason to keep it in here and take up space. So we'll pull the bed off it. Once we get the bed off, I think my plan of action is to just lift it up like how it is all the way across. Then put like blocks of wood or center blocks with some styrofoam on the pinch welds of the cab, and then just unbolt the cab and just lower the frame down and just leave the cab suspended in the air and hope that we can just drag the frame out from under the truck with the cab still sitting there. So we'll see how that goes, but that's my plan of action as of right now. So I'm not gonna keep going on a bunch. I don't know how long this video is at this point because we've been filming it for so long, but hopefully you guys are excited to see what we do with this thing. And I'm pumped up. I would say the Hardbody is probably one of my favorite vehicles that I own so far. The E36 might take over once it looks a little better, but this thing just always grabs attention everywhere I go. It's always people are always looking at it. The Cummins is the same way, but I'm just not very happy with the Cummins right now, so I don't like it right now. But yeah, I think that's it, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Deuces.